Most churches don't think about their building until they can't use it, and by then it's too late. I've seen a single pipe burst shut down a sanctuary for 6 months and cost $250,000 over something completely preventable. In this video, I'll show you how to prevent the three most common and costly types of damage in church buildings, what simple systems you can put in place right now to catch problems early, and how to avoid the kinds of hidden risks that can shut your building down for months. Before we get into how to prevent this stuff, let me tell you about a church I worked with. They had a pipe burst right in the sanctuary, not in some mechanical room, right in the sanctuary. By the time they caught it, the damage was already done. Floors, walls, equipment, everything. It ended up costing about $250,000. But honestly, that wasn't even the worst part. They couldn't use the sanctuary for 6 months. 6 months of trying to figure out where to meet, how to operate, how to keep things going. And the crazy part is, this wasn't bad luck. It was completely preventable. And that's the pattern you're going to see over and over again in this video. If there's one type of claim I see more than anything else with church buildings, it's pipe bursts. And the reason they're so dangerous isn't just the cost, it's how fast they can shut everything down. Water doesn't take its time. Once a pipe goes, it spreads quickly. It gets into floors, walls, equipment. And before you know it, you're not just dealing with a repair, you're dealing with a building you can't use. And here's the part most people don't realize. These almost always happen in places nobody's paying attention to. Unheated spaces, crawl spaces, attics, mechanical rooms. Somewhere out of sight until it's way too late. So what actually causes this? Most of the time it comes down to two things: temperature and exposure. If pipes aren't properly insulated or the building temperature drops too low, usually below about 55 degrees, you're putting those pipes at risk of freezing. And once they freeze, it's just a matter of time before they burst. But here's the good news. This is one of the easiest problems to prevent. There's 3 simple things you can do. First, make sure any exposed pipes are properly insulated, especially in attics, crawl spaces, and exterior walls. Second, keep the building temperature consistent. Even in areas you don't use every day, you've got to keep it above that danger zone. And third, and this is the one most churches aren't doing, install water sensors or flow monitors. These systems can detect unusual water flow or leaks early and alert you before it turns into a disaster. Because the difference between catching a small leak early and discovering a full pipe burst hours later is usually the difference between a minor fix and a 6-figure claim. And once you see how preventable this is, it starts to change how you think about the rest of the risks in your building. The next one doesn't happen as often as pipe bursts, but when it does, it's a completely different level of damage. And that's electrical fires. I had a church client who had an electrical fire in their sanctuary, and just like that, everything stopped. They couldn't use the space for weeks. Now, here's what makes this one tricky. When most people think about fires, they think about something random, something dramatic, something you can't control. But most of the time, that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is there's an issue sitting there in the background. Wiring, panels, overloaded circuits, just waiting for the right moment to cause a problem. And older church buildings are especially vulnerable to this. You've got systems that may not have been updated in years, sometimes decades. So what should you be doing about it? First, you need regular electrical inspections, not just a quick look, but a real inspection by someone qualified who can catch issues before they turn into something bigger. Second, if something is outdated, don't put it off. I know it's not exciting to spend money on electrical upgrades, but it's a lot less expensive than rebuilding part of your building after a fire. And third, pay attention to warning signs, things like flickering lights, outlets that feel warm, breakers that trip frequently. Those are all signals that something isn't right. And ignoring them is usually what turns a small issue into a major claim. Because with fires, you don't usually get a second chance. Once it happens, the damage is done. But just like pipe bursts, this is another situation where the risk is sitting there ahead of time if you know where to look. The next one is probably the most unpleasant type of claim I see, and it's water backup. When this happens, it's not just water, it's contaminated water coming back up through your system. And if it happens on an upper floor, it doesn't stay up there. It moves down through ceilings into rooms below, spreading damage across multiple areas of the building. And these get expensive fast. Not just because of the damage, but because of the cleanup, the sanitation, and the fact that parts of your building become unusable. Now, here's where this usually comes from. It's either something going into the system that shouldn't be there, or the system itself not being built to handle how the building is actually being used. I had a church client that rented space to a Montessori school, and within 8 months, they had 4 separate backup incidents. 4. And it wasn't bad luck. The plumbing system simply wasn't built to handle that level of use, so it kept backing up over and over again. So what do you do about this? First, you've got to be very clear about what's going into your drains, whether it's staff, tenants, or anyone using the building. If things are going down there that shouldn't be, it's only a matter of time before you have a problem. Second, you need to think about how your building is actually being used today, not how it was designed to be used 20 or 30 years ago. If usage has changed, more people, different types of activity, you need to make sure your plumbing system can handle it. And if it can't, you're going to keep dealing with the same issue, because this is one of those problems that doesn't just happen once. If the root cause is still there, it will keep coming back. And every time it does, it gets more disruptive and more expensive. And this is one of those risks that almost nobody thinks about until they're dealing with it. The last one is a little different because it doesn't usually feel urgent until it is, and that's roof damage. Most people don't think much about their roof unless there's an obvious leak, but the reality is your roof is constantly taking a beating from wind, from hail, from temperature changes, and over time it wears down. And the older it gets, the more vulnerable it becomes. So when a storm does hit, it's not just about how strong the storm is, it's about how prepared your roof is to handle it. And I've seen this play out a lot. 2 buildings in the same area hit by the same storm. One has minor damage, the other has a major claim. The difference is usually the condition and the age of the roof. So what should you be doing? First, you need to know how old your roof is and what condition it's in. If you don't know, that's the first problem to solve. Second, you need a plan, a capital expenditure plan that accounts for replacing that roof before it fails, not after. Because once it fails, now you're dealing with water intrusion, interior damage, and all the disruption that comes with it. And third, don't wait for a leak to tell you there's a problem. By the time you see water coming in, the damage has already started. This is one of those risks that builds slowly over time and then shows up all at once. And if you've been putting it off, it's just sitting there, waiting for the right storm. And when you step back and look at all of these together, pipe bursts, electrical fires, water backups, roof damage, there's a pattern. These aren't random events. They're predictable. They're preventable. And if you start looking at your building through that lens, what could go wrong? Where are the weak points? What systems do we have in place to catch problems early? You can avoid the kinds of situations that shut your building down for months. Now, all this is incredible information on how to keep your property protected and prevent disruption. But if you don't have the correct property insurance in place, you're not going to have the money to rebuild your building. And so that's why we created this next video, Property Insurance Basics Every Leader Needs to Know. So click here and I'll see you in that video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Bitner Henry with Bitner Henry Insurance Group, an American church group of North Carolina and Minnesota. We serve those who serve others.